Welcoming Director Laura Poitras. And series film investigative journalist Seymour Hersh. So, forgive me if I'll be a little presumptive here, but I feel like part of the enthusiasm from all the audiences that have seen this film this year has been a response to the fearless storytelling that you both have done over the course of your careers. It's been a response to the fact that your work stands against institutions and structures of power that seek to abuse their authority, to abuse human rights, and seek to expose those abuses to the public so that at least by transparency, we might be able to eventually make some sort of adjustment to what our expectations are of the people who are in power in the United States. Sai, your work goes back to before the Vietnam War. My Life was the first story that you broke, I believe. Tell me about that experience from your perspective and how it began your career, how it sort of launched your career as an investigative journalist.
The hardest thing to do. Is this on?
Yeah. Hold it a little closer.
Oh, yeah, hold it closer. Okay. In the doc, the words "descent into madness" came up, and one of the things that I tried to do by doing a lot more interviews than I needed really for the story. I must have seen 50 of the kids who were involved, maybe more, and some of them, I just tried to understand how it could happen, how you could end up, and there were little things, like they first got very shocked. They came from, these are lower middle class kids. Some of them, a slight percentage, maybe 8-10%, had some criminal activity. The judge said, into the army or into jail. And some of them were McNamara, except that McNamara basically changed the color of the corpses by lowering the standards and making more people from less educated communities, from the Hispanic community, from the African American community that might not have made the 60 or 70 degree, make it 45. Points on the test to get accepted. So we lowered the standard because some of the white boys who were in the war were coming back and talking. And so they wanted to minimize that. I'm just telling you what the reality is. And so I've been a correspondent for the Associated Press covering the war, not there, but here in Washington. And I don't know why I got so fascinated by it. I used to taught myself enough horrible French to read some of the French papers because they covered the war, D&B and Foote being a terrible, terrible disaster for the French. It's just like Laura and I have talked about the invasion of Iraq. It just was something that was just so stupid and so murderous. But the kids, what you found is they got there and they really didn't know much. They were not culturally sophisticated, didn't know anything about, nobody told them anything about the culture. And go ahead.
I'm going to disagree. Because I think what the film shows is that in both the case, I do think that, if we're going to be entering into bad wars, there should be a draft. We should bring that back so that it's not just based on who needs opportunities. But I think we see, you know, we saw in the Iraq War, we saw torture, and we saw this massacre in Milan. And what your reporting shows is it wasn't just the soldiers; these were orders. I mean, this was coming from a structure that, you know, with Westmoreland and, you know, and then later Rumsfeld and Bush. So I just want
That's
to.
macro. You're absolutely right about macro. I'm talking about micro. I'm talking about a kid from Oregon who told me about a week into the field, into the war, they saw an American tank roll by with 20 ears of dead, what they claimed were dead Viet Cong, but who knew? So they would be shocked by that. And then a week later, one of the guys would rape somebody, and then if there was a fuss, often they killed the people and said they were nurses. And so you saw an increment of sort of actions taken with with total impunity. None of the officers stopped. So you're talking about a major, big operation, major scale. I don't disagree with you. But anyway, the point is that I was so interested in how they got to the point where they could do what they did, even if they were ordered to. And the stuff I left out was some of the mutilation that took place. There was stuff that just went beyond comprehension. And it's not, people have been talking to me about what Senator Kelly's been talking about, this abusing orders. It was never even that formal. It just, they could do anything they wanted and nobody stopped them. And that was sort of is this war? I went to law school and hated it. And I remember the dean of law school said, just take a semester off. I said, no, I'm never going to be a lawyer. He said, I'm really advising you to take it. You know, he was trying to tell me that he drafted you, moron. But I didn't take his guidance anyway. People are people. How do they get to be that stage? I still don't have all the answers for it. Nobody has all the answers for it.
I'm curious about the descent into hell and the pattern that both of you see, and how power tries to prevent the truth from being known.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for coming. We, Yancy and I go way back, and Yancy's work also focuses very much on the sort of structural questions around power and trying to solve or have some kind of accountability. I've been wanting to make a film about Sai for a couple decades, and it's because of his body of work. It's because of how it has exposed abuses of power. It's because he did that when it was unpopular to do it, and received backlash because of that. And the importance of saying the unpopular things when actually they can make a difference in terms of saving people's lives or ending bad wars. And so what we're trying to do with the film is show these cycles and how they're repeated, how this are perpetuated, these systems of impunity, lies and cover-ups that lead us to them being repeated over and over, which lead us to today, and then the role of work like Sai's and other brave investigative journalists to try to interrupt those cycles and expose the kinds of lies that we, unfortunately in this country continue to, fall for. And now what we're seeing with Venezuela being an example of it, right? Like it's terrifying what's happening. And so this is the sort of the driving principle of the film, is to look at how these patterns and how this plays out.
So what do you think? How do these patterns continue to repeat themselves? Is it the way that our government is structured? Is it moral failing on the part of the people who are sent into places to do the bidding of the government? I know that there's a whole thing about what do you call it? Moral. It's some sort of the betrayal of when you betray your morals and to do the work of the government. There's a whole concept of what it means to have the government betray you. But I'm curious: is it really a betrayal, or is it that we are, as Americans, prone to this kind of abusive behavior?
I go back to the founding fathers and the principles when they did the Constitutional Convention, the notion that you have an executive and then you'd have a Congress and you'd have a court, and it was all predicated on the assumption of goodwill and integrity among all. And we're lost on that. I mean, what's happened now, particularly Trump I think he eroded it in the first term, but he's really going all out now. And it's a little scary when you think about what the balance that was created initially in America. And it was a very unfair balance in a way, where I said two senators from Montana with a population of 12 had as much power as two senators from California. They were terrible inequities. They had to work out the slavery problem. They had a lot of compromises to make. And it was hard to foresee what was going to happen. And I don't think we could ever change it. And so we're stuck in a constitutional system that's not working. And the idea of getting a constitutional convention out and make changes seems to be impossible. So I think we're in a problem that's essentially given the Constitution and given the powers the way they work now. Unless we have some miracle change in the Congress, some people just stand up and risk all. I don't see a way forward. I mean, I just don't see a way forward that's going to, I would assume when the Democrats get in office, they'll try to run it as hard up the butt of the Republicans as the Republicans are doing it now. I would assume it's all, that's my guess. Pretty pessimistic.
Well, I understand your concern.
I'm just gonna maybe offer a different perspective. I mean, I think we have a country that's founded actually upon violence, slavery, genocide, and cover-ups of those facts. And there's never been any process of dealing with that incredible violence. And I think that is kind of what I mean, that's not the focus of this particular film. We're looking at 50 years, the last 50 years, but I think that we're still living with that. And, that we haven't dealt with these, the founding violence that that created this country. We don't deal with it, we cover it up.
So I think when I watch this film, I think about the Department of Defense, and I think about the pledge that no one signed, I think, except for one quote-unquote news outlet, and everyone else is...
The Pentagon.
The Pentagon, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
The Pentagon pledged to not leak documents that were shared with them without official permission, whatever baloney that
I'm not
was.
hearing you.
You're not hearing me. I apologize, sorry. So I'm leading into a question about the Department of Defense and that pledge that everyone declined to sign except for one news outlet. So there's no press in the Department of Defense right now.
The Pentagon, the oath of right? The oath that the press were asked to take.
And your filmmaking and your reporting have both placed you in government crosshairs, whether it's been moments of surveillance, intimidation, or attempts to interfere with your sources. What did those pressures do to your understanding of your role, of your own role, but the role of journalism in general in the United States?
I have people, the whole purpose is, there are people who take the oath of office to the Constitution, and they don't read it as the oath of office to support and defend their general, or their senator, or their president. They take it to the Constitution. So those are the people that actually do have come to me. And so that's why many times in this movie, I'm a batshit about certain things, because they found stuff I thought I'd hidden. but because you protect them. I'm still in touch with people, and not only here, in other governments. There's a similarity of integrity. There's a core of integrity, of course, everywhere, and that's one of the things that makes it possible to do some of the stuff that I do, and I'm sure other reporters do. I gotta say, I thought the New York Times has finally figured out the money story is a good story, and they can use the money story. They're still a little anxious and nervous about the Middle East, And I'll tell you, you just have to go, again, you know, one of the problems with reading is you find things that are very troublesome. For example, why the West Bank? Well, the initial British mandate said Jordan too. So these guys, they're not just going to settle for the West Bank. And by the way, the notion that anything is better for anybody in Gaza is just a dream of some, I don't know who, some crazy people in Beatty and Schmotek. He's not going to get a pardon. The Knesset, they hate him, they won't give him a pardon. I think he wishes Trump could.
I want to go back to the question though, because I think it sort of relates to the film. I mean, when we heard this audio of Sy talking about being in the Pentagon press corps, and that, you know, the problem wasn't censorship, but self-censorship by the press, and that was something Sy said in the late 60s, and then to realize, like, today, like, this, how relevant it is, that it's, you know, I mean, obviously this current, you know, pledge to, you know, to the president is outrageous, and yet, you know, I think what Sy's reporting shows is you're not going to find out news in the Pentagon press briefing, full stop.
Yeah.
And you should get out and do the reporting. And so, you know, obviously, you know, I stand with those people who are now, you know, whatever, on strike, but it's like, you know, go out and find a story, break a story, because the pattern of this country is to lie, particularly about its wars, you know, and so, yeah. And I think, but in terms of, wait, I want to say something else. Can I say something else?
I was going to back you up. I was going to say.
I'm going to respond to the question. In terms of, like, labeling, I mean,
Why did I sign up with it?
It's the total playbook of the government. When journalists say things that they don't like, is to label them. They label Sy, whatever, a communist. He should be sent, whatever, sent, and then, you know, whatever, sent to Cuba, as one caller says, and, you know, and I get put on a terrorist watch list. I mean, it's total playbook. It's what they do. If you're doing reporting that is adversarial of this government and is getting under their skin, you will then be, or the peace protesters, you know, they got spied on and Sy broke the story. You know, these are just, you know, these were American citizens, or I don't know if they're all citizens, these were people using their right for free speech to protest an outrageous bad war, and then they, you know, the US government spied on them, you know, and illegally, the CIA. Anyway, so I just think that the use of labels or intimidation is complete playbook of what happens, what governments do, and we're not immune to that. I don't know if you've seen Julia Lofto's, My Undesirable Friends.
Not yet.
Which is, you have to see it. I mean, so it's set in Russia, and, you know, the first thing that happens is that they start that journalists are labeled as foreign agents, you know, and, you know, this is just, that's the playbook.
Sorry,
That was I just wanted to.
No, we should do a movie about that. The only point I would make about integrity is in California once, a same sort of a situation like this, I mentioned General Tony Taguba, and the audience began to applaud, because he was somebody who absolutely, he knew what he was doing when he described what torture is.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that he was running right up with the butt of the idiots that ran the war then. There's so much more to write about in terms of what Laura's talking about. I think there's sort of a huge breakdown between integrity in the leadership in the war. I don't know if it's salvageable. I know that in Iraq, in the beginning days of the war, when they embedded reporters, and reporters went to embedded, I actually do know from officers that when the initial wave of American troops came in whatever cars, whatever trucks or tanks or whatever kind of vehicles they drove towards Baghdad from Kuwait, and 1 or 2 days, you know, certainly within a day or two, they would stop and take fuel, and suddenly they see a car coming, and they'd say, oh my God, they might be coming at us, and they'd start screaming, stop, stop, which means nothing. And then they would open up and kill a car, kill everybody in the car. This is a day 1, day 2. Never reported, except later, anecdotally to me and others. So the whole, it's just overwhelming. That's all I can tell you. This movie isn't going to change war. It may, because I don't think the people that run it have any idea of where they are in terms of morality or integrity. It's just gotten so. I know a lot of guys who have it, who get out, and even as colonels, when they were sure to be generals.
Yeah.
But I just would like to say though, I do believe that the reporting that side that you did in terms of My Lai and torture in Iraq did change actually. The wars didn't stop the wars, but it changed how the public understood them and what was really happening and lifting the veil. And I do think that creates.
I don't want to talk about what happened in the last week or two because we really don't know what happened with the people who were survivors on the boat in Nicaragua. Yeah, we don't know. I don't know the whole story.
We don't know the whole story, but they're dead.
There's-
We don't know the whole story, but they're dead.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the part of it that we do.
And you know what some of the officers would say? I asked somebody the other day about it, and not a particular friend. He said, when we bomb a target and we take a look at it, and we see we haven't destroyed it all, we come back and bomb it again.
well, that's great. I mean,
That's their explanation for why they went back. That's the underlying explanation that nobody wants to tell about it necessarily, because it's sort of so abrupt. And the problem is everything being done there is totally underwater, totally, completely impossible to understand. Is it about, it's the largest oil reserves in the world of Venezuela. They spill in the Colombia, actually. It's huge, 3 times, 4 times larger than any other reserve. Is it that? What the hell does he want?
but I mean, I do think, extrajudicial assassinations is not something that we should be doing in this country, and
It's just too much. The problem is there's just a little bit too much that isn't known yet about the whole nomenclature and how they did it. Not to justify it or come even close to that.
Yeah.
But you know what, Laura, just let me say, it comes from an insane president making insane political decisions. That's all.
I want to turn to a point that I think that the audience might be interested in talking about, which is the recently announced merger or desired merger of Netflix with Warner Brothers. And I think that it follows a pattern of media consolidation that we've seen over the last however many years that have made outlets more cautious, more prone to self-censorship, and less likely to run the type of stories, that you have written in your career, or to platform the type of work, Laura, that we do. I'm wondering how you both are feeling about this news, this recent announcement, if it's approved, because it's an if. It's not.
I think it's a nightmare, and I think, makers need to resist it, and they already are. We have, statements have been issued by the DGA, the PGA, the documentary, International Documentary Association, for all reasons that you outlined, that this will create less adversarial, the type of documentaries that we care about. And that it shouldn't be treated as something that's a done deal, but that it's going to be resisted by filmmakers, and we've already seen that.
Yeah. The term that I was trying to think of that I couldn't grasp earlier was moral injury. Moral injury. And I think, Sai, that your body of work over the course of the last however many years, has provided an avenue for people who have been put in terrible situations to reconcile the moral injury that the United States government has caused them. What would you say to that notion, to that idea, that you have somehow created an avenue for people to reconcile what they've done with their own sense of morality?
Look, we're just discussing the murder, perhaps, of a bunch of guys that may or may not be drug dealers. I'm not so sure I have anything to celebrate. I'm just not. I don't see any wonderful impact. There's always going to be people in places with integrity. There's always going to be people. The question is, it's much more, I think, much harder now to, with somebody, they have to be, you can't believe how careful some people are contacting me. You just have to be, there's more ways of finding out stuff. But, you know, we've got 3 more years to get through this. How can you possibly be optimistic about anything?
I didn't say I was optimistic. I'm just talking about the price. I think that what's on my mind is the price of silence as well as the price of speaking. And how over the next 3 years, that price is going to get higher and higher and higher. And I don't know if we have the kind of people in this government that we did when you were writing about my life, or when you were writing about Abu Ghraib, or when you were interviewing Edward Snowden. I don't know where those folks are going to come from.
Right. I mean, I completely have the same concerns, and I think that we are living in a moment of institutional failure, and not just at the government. You know, I mean, we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing it in. I mean, I don't think it's. You know, I would put it on the journalist. I would, you know, the institutional failure that's happening. Part of going back to consolidations. I mean, that the CBS, 60 Minutes, and Paramount chose not to defend the First Amendment so that they could get a deal through. That's terrifying, and it threatens this country. It threatens the First Amendment. It threatens journalists around the world, and we do need to resist, and we do need our institutions to not capitulate to bullies, which is what we're seeing. So I'm not like waiting for the government to like get us out of this. I mean, I don't think we know that that's not going to be what is going to resist what's happening. I think we need institutions, and we need, you know, we need to be on the streets. We need to organize.
What is